it when you sent me the video today. I said, that is so, did he shave?
Yeah, I absolutely hate it. For those masks we have to wear, he makes us shave now.
That stinks. Well,
I'm
you
not
could
going to
grow back.
badmouth him. He's watching this probably. I'm not going to badmouth
Oh,
him.
yeah, we're live now, so you have to be quiet. No bad talk. Oops. Okay, so hi everybody. This is Karen Solomon from H.E.L.P again tonight. And with me tonight, I have Matt Thornton. Matt Thornton is an officer who had some mental health issues and he was suicidal, but he came back strong and he is still on duty and he is helping other people right now. So we're going to talk to him about his experience. And we are also here with Molly. Molly is the widow of Officer Joe Atchison. He died on November 4th, 2018. And she's going to talk about his death and how it affected her and his family and everything involved in that whole situation. So we were also supposed to have another widow here, the widow of Erin Garcia. She was a widow of Chris Garcia, but she wasn't feeling well, so she couldn't make it tonight. So Erin, if you're watching, we hope you feel better soon. So before we get started, I just wanted to, I know you guys got your boxes. So some of our families haven't gotten them yet. The mail's a little slow. So we saw that the kids who did a wonderful job, they were going to present those gifts to you at the dinner. So Sydney, she lost her dad to suicide on Flag Day. So what wasn't in your box was a small wooden flag we had made for all the families. That's going to be coming to you. And Dave Bray, who was supposed to sing at the dinner, he has autographed a CD for all of our families, and that's coming to you as well. And you all got your blankets from the Blue Line Brothers, who were amazing, super soft, comfortable.
Yes.
Yes. And they were all, yeah, they were good blankets. And Matt, we couldn't figure out what to do for the injured officers, so we thought about it. And we looked at patches, and we finally thought that one asterisk patch was a good one for you guys. So I hope you enjoy it.
Loved it.
Good. All right, so let's start with Molly. Molly, why don't you just tell us a little bit about Joe and his career in law enforcement and whatever you want to share right now, and then we can talk more as we go along.
Sure, sounds good. My husband started in law enforcement not long after our first child was born, so 2001. He started as a correctional officer in Lyon County, moved to the road. I can't remember the exact year. Served as a short time as the captain in charge at the Lebo Police Department, which is a really small department. And then we moved up here to Kansas City so he could join KRGC at the casino here in Kansas City as an agent. And served for, 16, almost 17 years.
Mm-hmm. Now, and Matt, as she tells her story, you can, if you have anything you want to tell her about how your experience was. So Matt, maybe you could tell Molly a little bit about what happened with you. Molly, I know you said in the past that, you noticed a gradual change with him and that he had some issues and maybe didn't get as much support as he needed. So Matt, did you kind of experience the same kind of thing when you were going with what you were going through? Did you notice a gradual change in yourself?
Oh yeah, I was totally unprepared. I got hired in 2004. No idea what I was getting into, honestly, and the changes you don't really get warned about it. They you have like maybe hour class in the academy talking about the mental health side of it, but it's really just a glanced over type of thing. And it's alarming when you look back at how little we were told. And Molly, I have to hold back tears when I hear anything like that. It's heartbreaking, but
thank you. It was definitely a shock when it happened, and we miss him a lot every day. The him that we knew was amazing. The him that he changed into was not the person that any of us knew.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Molly, did he have? I talked to Joe's mom earlier today, and she had mentioned that one thing she'd like to see was something Matt was just mentioning, that a mandatory part of their training once a year, mental health checkup or something like that. So do you think, did Joe have any kind of training like what Matt mentioned?
I don't even think he had any training in the academy, to be perfectly honest with you, with mental health. He was so afraid of talking about it to anybody outside of our house or outside of his mom. Even some of his closest friends didn't even know there was an issue because it could jeopardize his job. He did not want to lose his job and be labeled, the black sheep because he had something mentally going on.
I know you got a
So
lot of
sorry
kids.
about
How many
that.
kids? 5?
Sorry. We have 5. My
No,
4-year-old
that's
is
okay.
trying to show me something.
I got 5 too.
And how are the
We
kids doing?
understand.
Oh, look at you guys, 5 kids
Yeah,
each.
see, we
Oh,
have a lot
that's
to
so
talk about
sad.
after
I
this.
only have 2. You poor things.
Yeah, it's a little crazy around here, I tell you. My kids are actually doing much better than I thought they ever would. Our oldest is in college. He just finished his first year and is doing phenomenal. Um, he's just going for everything that he can and taking over the K-State agricultural department. He just got voted 2020 Mr. Ag, so he's super excited about that. He also is working with the Senate of the Ag department, so he's doing that. Then we have 2 girls that are also doing really well. It was a long, first year with therapy, pretty regularly there for a while. Also, social work intervention. We did have some therapy come into the house as well. The twins were just almost 3 when this happened. So thankfully, they don't understand a lot of it. They miss
Yep.
their dad because, of course, we talk about him daily. As you can see, on the wall behind me, we have his picture everywhere, all over the house, to keep his memory alive. I want our kids to know all the best parts of their dad and remember that.
So you guys were together since you were 18, right?
Just turned 19. So
Just
yeah.
turned 19. Long time.
A long time. And he was 38 when he passed away.
Hmm. So tell us a little bit about the changes. So, maybe for a family who's currently, and Matt, you could talk to this too in a minute. Maybe a police family who's noticing some changes. Do you think, a lot of families look back and they say, well, I maybe noticed this, but I didn't think anything of it. But looking back, I see that maybe this was something that was a red flag to me. Is there any advice you want to give to people about this?
Actually, on my side, there's a lot of advice. Like I said, my husband was amazing. He was our support system. He was there. He picked up the pieces when something was wrong. Our marriage wasn't always the easiest. We lost some very important people in our lives, but I always had him here to help through that. Sorry if I cry. And this has been the hardest loss of my life, and I didn't have him here to help, which really sucked. But he, over the last 2.5 years, the first sign I should have noticed is that he sought help himself. So he knew that something was going on. He just didn't know exactly what it was. And then just the way he talked to us wasn't normal. He would say, some hurtful things that he had never said before. He wasn't as sympathetic with myself or the kids when anything was wrong. He basically was like, suck it up, life goes on type of thing, which was never him. He was a little more aggressive with the kids, which never happened. I mean, he was their best friend from the time that they were born. He would go spurts of sleeping all the time. That's all he would do. And then he wouldn't sleep for weeks. It was just, and to look back at it now, I think to myself, why didn't I see this? But it was so gradual over time that it just turned into our new normal, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And it, now I think about it, I'm like, why didn't I try to do more? I talked to his doctor. We talked to him together. He didn't see a problem. Started him on some meds, but then, Joey would take them for a little while, worry that his job was going to find out, stop them. And I'm sure that played a huge part of that cycle of how he changed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Now, I mean, I think it's, I think we all feel for you, and we know that you probably did everything you could at the time, and we certainly don't want you to blame yourself for anything.
Right.
And we talked about this earlier, so we know that this is not your fault. It's a very complicated thing. So even when
Right.
it's there with you, it's not as easy to see. So Matt,
Right.
maybe you could tell us, were you going through some of the same things that Joey was going through?
Oh, absolutely. It's almost it's a progression of things that you don't notice, that's building and building and building. And when she said the sleeping, because you never sleep as a patrolman. Where I'm in Chicagoland, so we're a very violent city. And when you get put on, you always work nights. So you literally don't see any light, any daylight, any literal light, or and you live in the dark, like dark places.
Right.
So you start to get cynical, but you can't ever show a facade. You can't show a chink in your armor, because your new identity is this cop, right? Like, I can't be weak. I can't admit I'm weak. And then the unhealthy outlets that there's so potentially there for you to take. Instead of seeking help, you'll seek help on your own through drinking, or through bad habits, or through just a change in your personality altogether. You kind of it changes your DNA, and the longer you don't talk about it, the more it just fog. It's like I always said it was like a slow fog, and all of a sudden when you look around, and it's just getting thicker and thicker and thicker in this fog that you're in, and then pretty soon you just don't want to be in this fog, and you don't want to talk about it. Then you just want to see it end.
And it's interesting that you say, you don't want to appear weak, and because I mean, looking at you, you look like a really tough guy. I mean, I wouldn't want to run into you into a dark alley with your tattoos, and you're a big guy, and I've seen videos of you at the gym, So I imagine for somebody that, you have this appearance even more so of being a tough guy, that it's even harder for somebody like you to, to
Yeah.
show your emotion and to be vulnerable.
There's so much. You're taught, almost trained to do this job. We call it machista, like as a macho guy, do it with your emotion and be tough. But really, that should be like I always like to say that type of training needs to just be eradicated. It's not about how tough it's. We're here to care about people and use honey instead of vinegar. It's worked like a charm since I finally figured it out. But yeah, that's a huge thing, the macho-ness that's in this job.
And how did your family handle things when you were going through such a tough time?
My family didn't really know. I didn't want to talk to them, no. I was towards the end when it got really, really bad. It was almost, she's my wife now, but she was my girlfriend at the time. She turned me in, and that's when like my mom and my sister found out about it, and they didn't know how to handle it. They were totally shocked. My mom, I remember her calling me, and when I got caught one time, and they made me stop working for a few months because I actually, not to be too grotesque or anything, but I actually was planning out my own suicide, and I fell asleep off of all the drugs that I was taking, the prescription pills, and I fell asleep with a gun like under my chin, and that's how I got caught. My wife went crazy, and I got turned in, and that's when everyone was like shocked, like what? Because I never talked about it. And
so let's just talk a little bit about that. And kudos to your wife, because turning you in is tough, right? Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you walk up to most police wives today. I don't know how many would, without even thinking, say, yes, I would turn him in, because they'd be afraid that he'd lose his job, a career, make things worse. So she had an awful lot of balls, excuse my language, to do that.
That's all she does.
Step up for you, huh?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Looking back on it, I would have done it in a heartbeat. I wouldn't have cared if he lost his job. I don't care if he would have worked at McDonald's, as long as he was still here, for our kids and for our families. I would have done it in a heartbeat.
But you didn't know.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was that bad.
Yeah. Now you told me your story. I know your story about that. Don't worry about your kids.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh, they're awesome. Let them go.
Leave them be. They're fine. fine. Trust me. Don't worry about it. We understand you've got 5 of them. Throw some candy out. See if they,
I don't know where it is at the moment, or I totally would.
Hi guys.
You say hi.
So hi. So and obviously I don't want to talk about it in front of your kids, but I know what happened that day and how it
Right.
happened, and you were there, and so I think that had that situation not been so permanent, had it only been an impulsive thing where he didn't quite go through that time, you probably would have stepped in and said, Joey, we've got to do something here and get him some help and go
For
to his
sure.
department. Because there are some
Well,
wives who have put their foot down and gone and said, you need to help him.
and there were actually 4 times that this had happened before. I honestly, the first 2 did not realize what was going on. I thought he had drank too much, but in, looking back and after he confessed to me, and actually taken some pills, an awful lot of pills. I was mad at him because I thought he was drunk and acting foolish in front of our kids. And I thought, how can you do this to our kids? And, had it happened that he confessed to me in a time that I could have forced him to get help, I definitely would have. I took him to the doctor, and we, sat down and had a very long talk with his doctor about what was going on. And, he looked at his medicines. We went on a new plan for medication. But then, I found out later because I requested his autopsy report. I wanted to know what happened, why my husband died from that gunshot wound when other people survived. I don't know if that was the nurse in me that wanted to know that or what. But his tox report was completely clean. So he had taken himself off his medication again, which I found out, the other 3 times that he had tried, he had also taken himself off his medication. So it was a combination of things that I learned afterwards. Thank you, buddy. That now I see as, a big picture. I did not see the big picture going through it. One of his best friends, I've also talked to him quite a bit, and he noticed some changes but didn't really think anything of it until we collaborated together and talked and shared stories and shared what was going on here versus what he was telling his friends. And it's painting this whole picture of, oh my God, had I just maybe reached out to some of his friends, or his friends reached out to me, we could have put this together sooner and tried to figure something out.
And that's a
So
pretty common theme. I think, I know there's quite a few families who the spouse had an at-home personality and an at-work personality, and they were very different. So often at work, they didn't know how bad things were. So that's a pretty common theme. And I think that's with anybody who has depression or mental health issues. They, are able to keep it together when they need to and hide it when they need to, but then at other times they just let it go. So Matt, did you find yourself doing the same kind of thing?
Well, yeah. Well, getting turned in didn't help at all. Honestly, I knew us as professionals, and I mean, we deal with psychological patients all the time, and I knew exactly what to tell the shrinks to get back to work. I knew exactly what to say. I took. I learned a little bit about myself, but to say that the spirit and the fog left me, it never really did. It's not even what saved me. Um, so I just went back, and I still was on this head-on path to get out of this fog. It was really
Why
kind
don't
of
you tell
made.
us what happened
So
to get out of it?
it
Because I know that there's a story behind that.
yeah, I was, and I feel when I talk, especially when I talk to widows and stuff, I get this sense of like a survivor's type of guilt, and it just hurts. But
don't ever feel guilty. Feel very proud of yourself that you were able to make it through this, because that has to take a lot of strength, a lot of courage to do that.
thank you. I, it took me a long time to tell the story, because I was afraid people would think I was crazy. See, when they put me back on the street after I got help, I think the pills made me worse. They put me on a bunch of more pills. It actually made me worse. And and I kept on my self-destructive ways, and pretty soon my wife, now she was my girlfriend back then, she was done with me. She said, I'm not waking up to your dead body. I'm done with you. So she kind of did the right thing and abandoned me. So it was really just me, and I knew I was at the end of my life, and it was all planned out. I had it scripted out like if you're a football fan, it was like an offensive scheme. It was all a game plan. Play 1, 2, 3. I had it all written down. I typed it out on an iPad. It was my note that I had left for the world. I was going to have my brother find it, and I had a list of everyone I hated, everyone I loved, even the songs I wanted to play at my funeral. And I was ready to leave that for him. And I'm on duty. Hadn't heard from um, many people in a long time, and I'm just on duty one night, and I'm crying because when you're that sad, and I promise that every cop that's going through this, when you're by yourself, especially at nighttime, and you're just patrolling, it's just you and nobody else. You cry. I used to weep every shift. I'd go and listen to music and just weep of what my life had become because I felt no hope. So I'm crying to myself like I did every shift. I parked in a parking lot. It was 2 a.m, and it was a Chicago winter, which was nobody was out. It was 20 below with a gusting wind, and I'm sitting there crying to myself and my squad, and I'm going over this plan because my trigger happened. I hadn't heard from her in probably a couple months, and that was it. And I'm going over this plan. I'm watching my tears. I remember literally sitting in my squad watching my tears hit my pant leg, just like boom, just counting the tears, going over this plan. Um, like the specifics of it, I was gonna, because I had practiced how I was gonna do it. And as I'm crying and weeping to myself, I see this lady in the parking lot walking towards me, and I instantly get mad. Like, why are you gonna bother a cop? And why are you out at 2 a.m. on this crazy winter night? Um, so she makes a beeline right from my window, and I'm just instantly enraged. I didn't want to talk to her, so I wipe my tears away and roll my window down just a little bit. I'm like, kind of like, yeah, can I help you? And she says, she sticks her hand through the window, and she hands me what I seen, and when as soon as I grabbed it, it was a cross, and she just said, "You need this." And then she just turned around and walked away with no explanation at all. And I just felt at that moment, I've never felt something like that before. I had for the first time in my entire life, I just like kind of screamed out like, God, do something because I'm gonna die. Like, if you're there, save me. And this is the part where people think that I'm crazy, or what took me so long to tell the story is I like literally heard Jesus tell me he forgives me. He tells me, I've been with you this whole time. And he says, stop what you're doing and follow me. Um, and I had never felt a peace like that in my life. I still to this day don't know, was it audible? Was it in my head? I just know I just felt a peace that that I never felt. And I knew that my sister worked at a church. I'd never been there. I avoided that like the plague. So I called her up and I said, something crazy happened to me. I need to get in there. And that was when turns out she knew all about my issues because my mom had told her. And she got me in there the next day. Was when I gave my life to the Lord. And then he just sent me on a totally different path. He taught me kind of how to use the badge that I hated that was going to kill me to now I can use it to save lives, like literally. So that's kind of what the story in a nutshell is.
Thank you. It's a great story, and I know I keep looking to my left. There's so many comments. There's a lot of comments, and I'll kind of get to them in a minute. A lot of support for you guys, and a lot of support for you sharing your story. So this happened back in 2013, 2014.
2000, it was January of 2013.
Yeah, so it is a long time. It took you to tell your story. You just told it what in 2018, if I remember.
I told it publicly. Um, in front, it was about, I would say 2016, maybe 2016,
Okay.
2017. Maybe
Yeah, so
2017 is
it's
when it was public knowledge.
and it's been a long
Yeah,
time, and it's still very emotional, you know. So
yeah,
so that's a testament to your strength, because it is such an emotional thing that you carry with yourself, and also that for people to understand that even though you're healing, it's still going to hurt a little bit, whether it's a good hurt or a
mhm,
bad hurt. You know, so they have to understand that it doesn't always completely go away, but it's good to be here, right? To feel that.
yeah, yeah. I I look back and I think of the path that I walked, and it's just I know the pain is there, but I know that what we do, like what Nick did, what Blue Help does, is we are saving. We're using that to save lives. We're using it for good. So Molly, I wanted to ask you, Molly, did you have any idea that in law enforcement we lose more people to suicide than we do to violence?
I honestly had no idea. And until my husband died, I, it wasn't even something I thought about. You guys are just the ones that take care of everything, the ones that, are there in the darkest hours, that are there to help pick up the pieces when something bad does happen. Something bad, only happens to you guys if it's a bad guy. It's
Hmm.
never, the bad guy's not supposed to be within yourself. It's outside forces.
It
But
wasn't until I spoke to Nick and Blue Help actually last year that I actually found out about this stuff. I've been a cop. This is my 17th year, and to not even have this told to me, like we do all
right,
this training for tactics and shooting and self-defense and knife defense and bulletproof vests, and what do we train right here? Like
right,
it was never told, and there's no
right.
warning.
And to
That's why I
me,
love Blue Help.
that, yeah, the mental health part of it is just as important as anything else.
Oh yeah.
After seeing my husband shoot himself, I can never imagine that being my life and my career, is to see that kind of stuff. And I know how badly it's affected my head. So I can't imagine you guys seeing that day in and day out, the worst of society, and not receiving the help that you need to make sure that you're okay up here from
Mhm.
everything that you deal with. It just baffles my mind.
So there's just a comment or a couple comments about turning you in, about that terminology that um, we should part of changing the narrative around all of this is that we're not turning them in, we're helping them. We love them and we want to
Yes.
help them.
Mhm.
So that's it's funny how um, just to kind of change the topic a little bit for everybody's emotions. This is really hard live feed that we're doing here for everybody, including you guys, especially you guys. But the terminology that we use is so important, right? So we try to say died by suicide. I know there's an argument that it doesn't really matter because they killed themselves, and so what difference does the terminology make? But it makes some people feel better. And when we talk about turning people in, we're not really turning them in. We need to soften our language and in the culture as a whole,
Mhm.
right? And Matt, you know this especially because you're still a police officer. The culture and the terminology we use is so difficult and so angry when we talk about mental health and we talk about getting help, and we talk about if an officer goes to get help, somebody's going to tell on him, or it just has so many of the things, the terms that we use has a negative connotation. So for you, Matt, what kind of terminology do you think could be changed since you're on the job now and you see this firsthand?
Yeah, and it's funny how I don't even think before I even say that it was like that's the stigma that's on it. Like it felt like okay, I'm being outed as this weirdo, this guy that can't take it. And that's a great point. I would say that, like, let's get you talking. Let's get you some help, or let's get to find out what's going on. I always tell people that the most important thing is simple. Anybody could do it. Just say, brother or sister, how are you doing? Like, and mean it, not just for the day. Like, how are you doing?
Right.
Yeah, that's what I
And it's
always
funny because
encourage people.
we've talked about this when we speak publicly and we go out and we're invited to speak to Blue Help and
Hmm.
give
I
presentations and
completely
stuff.
agree with that.
Yeah. So, and one of the things, some of the things we say is, instead of saying, hey, I'm a tough guy, I can do this, why can't you? We should say, hey, this is how I do it. Maybe this will work
Hmm.
for you. If it doesn't, let's find a way to make it work for you. You know,
Hmm.
instead of making it such a negative thing, there's just so many things that we use, and you're right, it's not, you're not, you're not weak, you're not a coward, you're not a weirdo, because you need help. You're a human being, so one day I was giving a conference, and this guy in the front row, I just picking on him because he had a plaid shirt on, right? I said, this guy wears a plaid shirt every single day of his life, and tomorrow he comes in and he's wearing a polka dot shirt. That should be a flag. Why are you wearing a polka dot shirt? Not, in the grand scheme of things, you know what I mean. But there's some small things. You're riding with a guy, a guy, and these days we don't have enough cops to have partners all the time, but you know each other. You've been working together for years. You know when the guy's dog died. You know when he got served divorce papers. You know when the wife's child is sick or something's going to push them just a little bit further along. So noticing those things and asking them nicely, like you said, Matt, and really meaning it. Hey, is everything okay? Can I help you out? Those things are really important.
It's almost like the coming from someone from within. I found it's just so helpful because um, if you can get this guy, because I was like a leader in the department. Like I led all shifts and drug arrests and gun arrests, and I looked like this. Uh, I looked really good as an officer, like this solid dude. But for me to like say, you know what, no, I am hurting too. So let's all just talk about it. I think that just it speaks volumes
Hmm.
when the perceived tough guy admits that he's weak, because we're all weak.
Right.
Yeah.
This world is broken. We're all weak. We can't do this alone. So let's stop BSing and just I can't do this alone. How you doing?
Yeah.
Actually, it was somebody said, she asked people where your head's at and things like that, to soften the language. Sarah from Code 4 Counseling.
Yes,
Um,
that's a great one.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about support then. So, I think we all know there's a lot of stigma associated with, obviously that's what we're talking about. And then even after the suicide, the families don't always get help. That they I know we've seen it. We've seen it too many times that if an officer takes his life, he's perceived as weak or coward, or he somehow brought shame onto his department. And that's not really the message we want to send either, because that's when the department, I think that's when the department really shows its strength. Because if you step up for that officer and the family and you admit this happened and we're going to support them and we're going to treat him just the same as any other officer who died off duty,
Hmm.
then that's a really courageous thing, and it destigmatizes it. But when you turn away from it, and you shun it and you shame by not attending the funeral or whatever it is, not supporting the family, you're re-stigmatizing the family, and creating that a bigger problem for mental health. What do you think about that, Matt?
I think that it's shameful to not support and not honor. Molly, your husband was a warrior. All warriors have a breaking point, and I think that we need to lift brothers and sisters that have died in this way, lift them up just as any other, and honor them, um, because I know from personal experience, that's what I would have wanted. That's what I wish. We need to iron that wrinkle out too.
And that's a tough one to iron.
Yeah,
It's a really
I
tough
know.
one.
I've talked with Nick a lot about that.
Yeah. And I know you're talking about Nick Greco, who's a member of our
Yeah.
board,
Yep.
so
Yep.
people
That's
know.
my guy.
Yeah.
That's my guy.
Nick. Yeah, Nick's a funny guy. He's got this, public persona where he's really serious, but he's hysterical behind the scenes. He's a really
We
funny
talk in the
guy.
hall after every
I don't
class.
think people get to see that side of him, but he's a funny guy. So Molly, I know,
Sure.
I mean, I don't even have to ask how you feel about this, but I know that you would like to see Joey honored in the service he gave to his community. You know, uh,
Definitely. I think a big part of it is too, nobody knows, or at least I don't think they really understand how low he was. Um, and I know they put a lot of the blame on me, that he was trying to get away from me instead of trying to get away from something else. And I know that he was trying to get away from something when I saw his eyes and saw nothing there. When Matt talks about that fog, now that I think about my husband's eyes right before it happened, I can see that because there was absolutely no part of him there. It was clouded over. But I think it's easier for other people to blame us than to help us through this. His first department, only a couple of people showed up, and those were people from the jail that he worked with, in 2001, not the people that he worked with on the road. Nobody showed. I mean, some people showed up from the state, but they all sat in the back. Like, they didn't say anything to any of us. They didn't show up to his reception afterwards. Nothing. Have I heard from them since? I've heard from them enough to say, hey, we need to come get his stuff, and brought, a deputy here on standby to get his things. So, to me, it felt like like, are you watching me? Are you thinking I'm going to do something to you when I give you his stuff back? Like, do you not trust me? What's going on? And, afterwards, after it happened, I felt like a criminal. I didn't get to go be with my husband at the hospital when he died. I got held in a police station, being sprayed for gunshot residue, interviewed, not any of the things that I thought would ever happen. I mean, my husband died alone because of that. And those are the kinds of things that I get mad at. I don't get mad at him because I know he was hurting. I get mad at the things that have happened afterwards, that, he doesn't matter. He doesn't matter to them. And I feel like he should matter.
I think that, yeah, of course he matters. And I know that a lot of people don't know how to handle suicide, and it's a societal problem, and it just overflows and it's amplified by law enforcement, the culture. So I think that's a really tough one, because even people who aren't law enforcement, when they die by suicide, people are suspected, and there tends to be a stigma and a shame about it. So that's really hard, and especially because the blue line family, it's a blue line, and we should all stick together. And I know oftentimes when an officer's injured or suicidal, it doesn't always happen that way. So
Right.
and we're not bashing law enforcement or calling anybody out. It's just a fact. It's a part of the culture, and we've known it for years. And it's just we're just talking about it matter of factly, because this is the stuff that happens. And there are departments that are amazing, that support the families, that are there 100% afterwards, that have fundraisers, that take care of the kids. And one of the widows I was talking to today, she was saying the hardest part is my sons. They don't have anybody anymore, and they don't have the department anymore, and that's really tough. Because even if an officer dies of cancer off duty, or a car accident off duty, they get some support. So
Right.
suicide is just such a different kind of death for so many people. And one of the things that we do is we absolutely positively will not post an officer's name on our page unless we have permission from the family, no matter how public the suicide. And Officer Garcia's suicide was pretty public, because he shot himself, and he was in the ICU, and then he donated his organs. It was very public. And she said that made it even harder for her, because there's that spotlight on you in a time when and the spotlight for you was different. The spotlight was, were you participating in his death? So the spotlight is a very difficult thing to be in this situation, because it's not the same kind of death as other deaths. So
Right.
I think that's hard for people to understand as well. Your kids.
There's such an awkwardness behind. I love that kiss too. There's just such an awkwardness behind. It just seems to me that departments have not really wanted to look at this topic whatsoever. Therefore, it's just so erratic how they react. It's unpredictable and strange. And there's they always say there's no blueprint. Well, let's get somewhat of a blueprint. Like, this is, we know what not to do. We talk about it more.
Yeah, and to me, it's as simple as treating it the same as any other off-duty line of death. I mean, a
Hmm.
death type of death that doesn't have not line of duty, any other off-duty death. It's that simple because you have a policy for off-duty death, so
Hmm.
use the same one.
Yeah.
It's no different. And you're right. It's not something departments have talked about for so long, and things are slowly changing. You know,
Yeah.
it's been in the news. It's been more public. It's not changing. I like to get things done overnight. It's not changing
Yeah.
fast enough. It is not
I
changing
agree.
fast enough for the families that are losing officers to suicide now. But I think we all knew this is going to be an uphill battle. And it
Hmm.
is, but people like you, Matt, people like Molly, just coming forward, telling you stories, giving people the courage to step forward and get help. And Matt, you're still a successful officer. You're still there. You have a nonprofit of your own. Why don't you
Hmm.
talk about all the great things that you're doing now?
Yeah, like I said, it took a year to get rolling because I never wanted to talk about it. I just kind of went on a journey, kind of quietly, and then the same pastor that helped me that next day, he convinced me to start a youth organization, and now that's my motivation. We started with 6 boys, and we've served over like thousands of kids. The entire neighborhood comes. It's all mostly high risk kids, and they lean on me. So I give them life. I always think that this is my second chance. So I give them life. We've dumped it in 6 years. We've dumped, I would just a roundabout guess, $200,000 maybe back into the streets. We've been able to raise and put back into to underprivileged kids. We teach them about life and God and mentor, and there's so many stories that come out of there, that we've been able. It's called My Father's Business. So you'll always see me in the shirts. It's my whole wardrobe.
Yeah, my
Um,
father's business. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Why did you
but yeah,
call it my father's business?
it was a song I heard, and it was like, oh, that's all right, because people didn't understand what I was doing. I'm like, well, I'm just kind of doing God's business. So it's like a verse from the book of Luke. Is
Ah,
they asked Jesus, what are you doing? He's, I'm just about my Father's business. So it's kind of like this is what my life's mission is now. I'm gonna bring life
right.
instead of just hating life. So yeah, it still hurts. So there's a lot of tragedy. We live in a violent city, and we've lost way too many kids to violence. And I'm actually going through, my top soldier took his own life last year, from my
Sorry.
organization. So yeah, it's life never gets easier. This earth is so broken, but it's all how you who you run to, and what you do with it.
I want to be like you when I grow up, Matt. You're so
I know. My wife would say, no, put the brakes on that.
So, Molly, what do you want to come out of Joey's legacy? Tell us what you'd like to see come out of his um, career and his commitment to his community and his life.
I would like to see it become normal to seek mental health in
Mhm.
law enforcement, that, you know, it's put out there, there's resources, there's places to turn without fear of retaliation or fear of losing a job. Um, I want to see that culture change. And if it takes me sharing my story over and over and over, I will continue to do that. That was Joey's mission in life, was to help others, which is why he became a police officer. And I want him to be able to continue to help people in his death as well.
I think he
Amen.
will.
That's can I tell one little short story
Go.
real quick, Karen?
This is all yours.
Oh,
This is you.
here's a perfect example of the narrative that you're helping change and Blue Help is doing. We teach that class at the local college here. They asked me to do 2 hours every month. So I'm going to class, and it's a class full of cops, and it's macho tough guys. When you teach a class to cops, it's the hardest class that you do. Period. That is the toughest crowd. A bunch of macho cops, and you're going to talk about weak stuff in front of them. So I'm using the restroom before I go in to do the class, and I see that 2 of the cops had snuck out of the class, kind of like we're just walked out, and I can hear them talking as I'm in the restroom. Oh, this blanky blank suicide crowd. I hate this. This is so stupid. This is yeah. So I'm like, I heard it all. So like that's that. So I finished. I go in and I start teaching my portion. And me and Janet Mason, she's awesome, the professor that goes with me. She does her part, and then I come up and I tell my story. So as I'm in the middle of telling this, I see one of the same cops that was in the bathroom. He's in the back of the class just weeping.
Oh.
And that's a perfect illustration of that ruggedness, that macho-ness, that you want to put on this facade that you're too tough for this. And then boom, I look back and he's crying. And he comes up and embraces me after the class. And I see that every class I do, there'll be at least 4 or 5 or 6 of people that weep and they say, you know, I'm so glad we heard this. I'm gonna go seek help. We all are weak and we all need help. So I just it's doing good. I promise you, this is good stuff.
It's
Just like a
powerful
yearly
hearing people's
physical,
stories.
you need a yeah, you need a mental health check just like you need
Yes.
to check your body. It's
Oh
all
yeah.
part of the same thing.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And I commend you, Molly, and just to look at it that way. Like he wanted to save people, so that's what your mission is gonna be. And it will be blessed, I
Definitely.
promise you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there is 121 comments so far, and I can't see all of them, but I've been kind of looking back and forth, and I know that everybody's been super supportive, and this has been very emotional for a lot of people. So if either one of you at any time want to go and reply to any of the comments, feel free, but you don't have to. There's there's no pressure on you guys. This was really powerful and important, and sharing your stories. And Molly, you have no idea. See, the funny thing about this for both of you is you're telling your stories, you're making yourself vulnerable, and you're giving people so much knowledge and power and coverage right now. So you're saving lives that you don't even know about right now, which is truly amazing. And you're going to give people the courage to come forward, not just to seek help, but to talk to other families who've lost people to suicide, because that's really hard to do as well, to
Mhm.
confide in other
I
families and
agree.
to find
Mhm.
people who've been through the same thing as you. So I just want to say thank you for doing this. I know it wasn't easy. Um, and I did, as you know, I talked to Joe's mom earlier today, and she was really supportive. She really wanted you to come in and tell Joe's story, and she felt it was really important that he be heard, and she wants to
Mhm.
see mental health checks because of his death. And Matt, you
Definitely.
you coming in and sharing and talking about what happened to you, and again, you just like I said, you just look like this tough guy, but you're out there helping kids and you're sharing your story,
Mhm.
and you're letting other officers know that it's okay and that you can still
Mhm.
keep your job and move forward. So
Mhm.
if I could give you a standing, I actually could, but I really don't want to. I don't want to stand up and start clapping and look like a weirdo. Oh, here I am. How hypocritical am I? I don't want to look like a weirdo. But you guys, you guys are true. I'll drop my microphone and then it'll just be bad. My phone will fall. I can't thank you enough on behalf of everybody that's watching, on behalf of the whole Blue Help organization, all of our families, all of the officers across the country that are suffering. Thank you for being so candid and sharing your stories. And as you know, we're here for you guys. And I'm so sorry we didn't get to meet you both in person this year at
Oh, we
Police Week,
will.
but
Don't worry, we will.
hopefully.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, we
definitely.
will. You
Yeah.
will. Yeah.
Definitely.
So, and I'm gonna
And
be
I,
going for
you
your
know,
hairdo.
Oh yeah. I have good hair, but I don't have a goatee on here.
and that's been my goal ever since my husband died, is to be there for other people and have,
Mhm.
them reach out to me if they don't have somebody else to reach out to. And just to talk. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to listen. I'm here to point you in the right direction if you need resources, because I've looked all that stuff up. That's what I want to do. That's how I want to help people. If you need to reach out to me, if you just need to talk, let it out. I'm here. I'm here.
So, do you guys have anything you haven't said that you want to say, or you feel good? You feel comfortable? Do you feel safe? You feel
Mhm.
like you need Molly? I'm going to be calling you after this. Just be sure you're okay.
Sure. Yeah,
But
Okay.
I'm okay. I cry a lot. It's my new normal.
Mhm.
yeah,
Make sure you give Molly my phone number, Karen, and yeah, anything you need, let me know.
I
Thank
will.
you. I appreciate
So,
that. You too.
Matt, you good?
Yep,
I
I'm
thank you.
good.
I mean, honestly, I really, it means so much when people like you guys are just so, I just love that you come forward and you talk to people and you share and you're helping, and it's so important. And thank you so much.
It's our purpose. Thank you so much too.
Yes,
We love you
definitely.
both, you guys.
Thank you. All right,
Thank
I'll talk to you
you.
guys shortly. Thank you. And to
Okay.
all the people
Take
that are
care.
viewing, thank you. And if you need
Mhm.
anything, reach out for help. Please don't go it alone, and let us know, and we'd be happy to help you. And I know this has been a tough thing to watch, so please be careful and call somebody if you need to right now.
Amen.
Amen.